Children are dismissed for junior church. Well, we are honored today to have Rick Miller with us again. And, I've gotten to know Rick over much of my life. And the dedication that he shows to the ministry of the Brethren Retreat, as well as the Brethren Church, is simply remarkable. And so I always am honored when he contacts me, usually about the end of each calendar year, and says, hey, when can I come and share? Love to hear what he has to say about what's happening at the Brethren Retreat, which has been impacting lives for Christ, especially young lives, for more than a century. And so I'd like to invite Rick Miller to come forward.
Yes! I finally did it! I'm so happy! I got a trophy! I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to make sure that people know I have it. I'm going to make sure I thank the people that helped me have the skills to be able to pull it off. I'm so proud of this trophy. Have you ever had that kind of pride in something? Have you ever had an accomplishment that you've been so happy that you just wanted to make sure that people knew you had it? You wanted to be able to share it. You wanted to thank those that had helped you get to that point. That's the way I feel about the Brethren Retreat. Over 100 years, 10 decades, that we've had this prized trophy given to us through many, many servants, leaders that have cared for the place, many, many donors, volunteers who have helped us expand the resources that we have there. And sometimes I think we take it for granted of what happens there, the impact that it has. In 1 Corinthians, I'd like to share a verse with you. Paul is admonishing the Corinthians a little bit in chapter 4. And in verse 2 he says, "Now it is required that those who have been giving a trust or much must prove faithful." And I think what we have accomplished through the Brethren Retreat, from leader to leader, decade to decade, season to season, we have shown a remarkable faithfulness. And there's a legacy there that we need to be able to cherish and make sure others know. It's not just about the bricks and sticks. It's not about the dirt. But it's about the lives that have been changed through those tools that have been acquired. I've got a document that I put together that outlines by decade some of the things that took place at the Brethren Retreat, and I'd like to share that. A lot of it will be reading, but I'll interject different things that I know in those decades through stories that have been shared with me, things that I found through the Brethren Evangelist, and many of those years that I've just lived myself there. The Brethren Retreat was founded in 1919 by basically two pastors. There was a group of them later on, but there was two pastors. One of the pastors was not feeling very well, and so another pastor said, "Come, let me take you to a quiet place and we can rest." Those pastors were A.T. Wyrick, Arthur T. Wyrick. And if the chronology works out right, he was at the Ardmore First Brethren Church at the time. Ardmore, doing their 100-year celebration, found out that he was suffering from some kind of a stomach ailment. They don't know if it was a surgery, an ulcer, what it was, but he wasn't feeling well. About this same time, that another pastor said, "Come, let me take you to a place where you can rest." And that pastor's name was G.W. Wrench, George W. Wrench, and he was a pastor here. They went there, they sat on a log, they talked, they relaxed. They were on the south side of the lake, Shipshewana Lake, and at some point there, Pastor A.T. Wyrick's wife recalls the conversation. A.T. looked over his shoulder and said, "Who knows, maybe we could have meetings here someday, brethren meetings." And it was upon that vision, that statement, on the sandy high ground where the tabernacle now stands at the Brethren Retreat, began its ministry in 1920. A movement was formed to create a camp, a leaders academy, for Brethren young people. A site was selected on the south side of Shipshewana Lake. The first building was erected was the tabernacle. It was ready for service in July 9th, 1922. The second building erected was the girls' dorm. It was erected in 1923. The hotel was moved from County Road 250, about 1.5 miles from the west, to the lakefront, and that structure had been the home of J.D. Wenger family. It was added onto several times to accommodate a dining room, additional lodging, and then the canteen that was cherished by many. 100 years later, a vibrant ministry that serves nearly 4,000 guests annually has evolved from the dreams of those visionary leaders to shape 30 acres of swampy bottomland, overgrown high in weeds and brush, to create a spiritual retreat to restore mental, social, and physical needs. That tabernacle we celebrated recently, 100 years. The girls' dorm we recently celebrated 100 years. It's just fascinating to me that they bought 2 acres to put up, or 2 lots to put up the tabernacle. That went well. Come back, bought 4 lots, put up the girls' dorm, and said, you know, this is going so well. Let's just buy it all. And so they went to Farmer Tom Ash and said, we'd like to buy the rest of that bottom land, 27 acres. And they launched the Brethren Retreat. As it grew, the first camp was in 1927, and they began to plat off lots so more and more brethren could have their cottages there. In the 1930s, the National Sunday School Association of the Brethren Church saw that the camp and the Leaders Academy was the best opportunity to train young leaders for lives of Christian service. It was the desire of the founders of Camp Shipshewana to lay the foundation for producing capable leaders for our future churches. The founding and conducting of the camp and the Leaders Academy were met with so much success. In only the 4th year, 70 campers attended the 1-week training session. The program's aim was to help all Brethren young people to experience the measure of Christian growth, and to help them find a solution for the problems in life. In the 1930s, problems in the life. Who'd have thunk it? This evaluation was based upon the continued growth in the Academy's enrollment and the increasing efficiency in the church, and the efficiency of the church work among young people of their time. Also in this decade, the boys' dorm was the 4th building, and it was erected in 1936. The footprint of that building still remains, even though the building is gone. The footprint is where our basketball court is now. The 30s were an exciting time to see the ministry grow as more and more people got involved in the churches of the Indiana, and the Brethren denomination as a whole begun to rally around this spiritual retreat. One thing I need to mention about the term retreat that Pastor Stan Hula at Ardmore come to realize as they were reviewing the 100 years of the Ardmore Church is that when you first started using the term retreat in that early 20s and then in the 30s, 40s, it was not a term that people wanted to use. Because militarily, retreat was not a good thing. But we were asking our warriors, the saints, the people in the church, to retreat. And what you're actually doing when you retreat is you're refreshing, renewing, resupplying, and then placing back out into battle. And so there was a term when you asked people to retreat that they had to get around to understand the military positiveness rather than retreat in surrender. It was to retreat so you're prepared to re-engage. In the 1940s, phenomenal couple decades. During the 1940s and 1950s, the Brethren Retreat continued to expand its camping programs. During this time, much of the original property acquired was platted and sold to members of the Brethren Church to build their own personal cottages. These lots were 50 feet by 100 feet, not very big lots. The Brethren Retreat was a gathering place for local community to have meetings and events. Local community meaning things that took place in the town of Shipshewana. Many vibrant memories were shared by local residents of their youth activities taking place around the Brethren Retreat. Some things that were built at that time was Duffy's Bathhouse. Some people remember the bathhouse as being called Duffy's. It sat just outside of the girls' dorm area. It was not a pleasant thing to go into when I was a camper, because by then it was old, run down, musty, and filled with spider webs. But they were very proud. They had a bathhouse at the Brethren Retreat in 1946. The Vespers pulpit out at the lakefront was built in 1946 with a donation from a contractor in the South Bend Church, $4,000 at that time to build this nice Vespers pulpit where they had many meetings there. Vespers being an evening worship time. The Sisterhood of Mary Martha House was built in 1947, and the Layman's Lodge was built in 1958, and that was what was replacing the boys' dorm in 1936. The use of the boys' dorm then was for storage, indoor recreation, and for a long time there was a dean's office in the front corner that when we started summer camp, you'd go to that office to register as the parents would drop you off. That building then was torn down in 1992. There was a change to, because of the growth, there was a change to have full-time care of the facility. And Bud Hunter was hired. He was from the Wabash area, and he was the first caretaker. And after him then was Joe Everett. Many people remember Joe Everett because he was such a wonderful cook, and the things that he would serve in the, especially his chicken, I'm told, the chicken in the dining hall of that old hotel. In the 1960s, we peaked. We exploded. It was amazing. In the 1960s, the attendance was at its peak. The facility was still a summer facility with several new buildings being built or expanded. Most of the adjacent land was now developed with cottages. Several retreats for adults were being offered. The first Labor Day family camp was offered in 1964. So this year, in Labor Day, when we have our family camp, it will be the 60th year of continuous family camps on Labor Day weekend. Towards the end of that, the Tabernacle and the Retreat House received extensive renovations and an expansion during this decade. The Tabernacle went from a barn-type facility where you had the twist handles and you lift up the windows and a sawdust floor to where they encased it the way it looks today and put in a concrete floor, built a stage. That was in the late 60s. And then the girls' dorm was expanded from a small section. If you're going in the retreat house, everything to the east of the entrance is the original building. So they doubled the building and then made it an extra floor up. It's probably a 5,000, 7,000 square foot building. You know it's big when you have to run a vacuum cleaner. Major expansions in the 1960s. We were hosting over 600 campers a summer. We haven't done that since then. We're right around 230 to 250 campers a summer currently. At the end of that decade then, when Joe Everett was done being the caretaker, they hired a gentleman named Herman Brenz, and he was there for a couple years. His daughter was the one that got married in the tabernacle after it was renovated. It was the first wedding that I know of that was there, and he was there for a couple years. In the 1970s, we started to have some struggles. There's rapid growth without long-term plans. Many of the adjacent cottages had been sold off as you moved into another generation, or people left the church. There's no plan on how to maintain those cottages for what we had as a mission at the Brethren Retreat. Some cottages were developed into year-round houses. The camping programs were frequently interrupted or distracted by actions of their neighbors. I remember that frequently as a camper in the early 1970s. We'd go out the Lehman's Lodge, go for recreation, come back, and the neighborhood kids had ransacked our lodge. Just childish fun at that time, but you felt unnerved that your stuff had been moved. During this decade, the leadership began to change from a trusteeship to a board of directors. The first executive director was Pastor Jack Oxenreiter from Jesuit Brethren Church. He was hired in 1972. The second executive director, Ken Van Dyne, was from the Tiosa Brethren Church, and he was hired in 1976 at the age of 24 years old. He was serving as a youth pastor at the time at the North Manchester First Brethren Church. It was under his leadership of 13 years that we began to have long-range vision plans. In the 1980s, the vision of the executive director, Ken Van Dyne, was to move the ministry into a year-round facility, and acquire adjacent property had begun. Several new retreat programs were developed. A new dining hall was built in 1981 because in 1979 the old hotel got condemned because the sewer was no longer functional in that kind of a high water table. So the building was tore down and they replaced it with the dining hall up by the tabernacle. This took an emotional toll on many people. There was 3 generations of fun, loving times in that old hotel. The dining room antics and the songs that took place during meal times. The time hanging out in the afternoon around the canteen tables and ice cream bar. The big glass candy case. And the old national cash register that sat up on top. We still have that cash register, if you remember it. The camping programs remained stable, but there was changes in our society that began to be felt. The activities were growing to capture our youth's attention. The advent of other camp sports, academic sports, 4-H things. Paula Deerdorf served as assistant directors for a few years during this decade. They now live over in Ohio. The executive director, Ken Van Dyne from the Tiosa Brethren Church, resigned in August of 1988. The third executive director was Gary Cotter from Texas. He was hired in the winter of 1989. During the 1990s, there was an effort to relocate the camp by executive director Gary Cotter. There were several issues that were being identified as reasons to relocate to a more central location in Indiana District. These reasons were, we were landlocked. We were segmented, we were divided, we didn't know how to manage the distractions. We had encroachment by the neighbors. The vandalism and the distractions were getting even worse. I remember one time as a camper, during a time sitting out in the park, hopefully having devotions, a neighbor come out, started up his chainsaw, just stood there and revved it to make noise. The lake was beginning to show extreme signs of eutrophication or pollution. It was returning to a marsh because it was so shallow. High algae content, lots of weeds, stinky water. And then there was the pending municipal sewers that were going to go around Shipshewana Lake that were predicted to price us out. We were told to prepare for $60,000 a year to pay for our sewer. During that time, we evaluated 8 properties of where to relocate. We actually looked very closely at 2 of them and bidded on one, Crystal Lake at Warsaw, Crystal Lake Camp. It's now owned by the Creighton brothers, the egg guys, and they got rid of the camp and built a few houses there. But in 1997, there was an opportunity to pick up 12 acres adjacent to the Brethren Retreat that gave us road frontage along County Road 250. This was the largest tract of land that we were able to acquire since the 1925 warranty deed that we originally bought all the bottom land. And that changed us from a vision to relocate to a vision to revitalize. What we as leadership at that time realized is, hey, wherever we go, we're not going to find 200 acres of waterfront that we're currently on. Hey, wherever we go, we're not going to have the attraction of the Shipshewana amenities. Hey, it's not as important to relocate to the center of the district as it once was. During this decade, Larry and Cindy Hansen served as maintenance and food service staff during 1990 to 1992. You might remember those names. Larry and Cindy Hansen served as pastor here for a few years. They were at South Bend Church for quite a while and County Line. He had Crossbars Ministry, and when that folded, he went back to being a mechanic, and he loves making those engines roar. Gary Cotter then resigned in August of '94, and the fourth executive director was then hired. His name was Rick Miller from the New Paris First Brethren Church. Camping attendance was erratic during the 1990s. Winter retreats continued to grow, and the attempt to strengthen the guest ministry began to grow into a viable year-round effort. During the same time, buildings began to show their age. I had one person tell me, how comes this place looks so tired? I'm like, what do you mean tired? It just looks dated. Oh, okay, I had to look at it with new eyes. The need for year-round comfort for youth events, as well as adults, placed the need for long-term planning at the forefront. Changes in society's desire for what they deem rustic accommodations did not match our own facilities. Thus, Focus 2020, a vision to revitalize, was born in 1996 under the leadership of Executive Director Rick Miller. It was interesting when we were putting air conditioning in the buildings, how many of the parents and grandparents saying, air conditioning at camp? Why, we never had air conditioning. Why do they want air conditioning? And it was very easy to respond. And when you were a camper, we built Duffy's and you had indoor plumbing. And your grandparents and parents didn't like that either. It's the maturation of society change of what we consider to be comfort. The ministry celebrated 75 years with a Diamond Jubilee celebration on Labor Day, 1995. Over 300 people enjoyed that festive weekend. And Horseshoe Acres was dedicated to the service of the Lord, the 12 acres that we acquired to expand our facility. In 2000, Christian camping struck a low point during this decade. It was hard to excite a digital generation with outdoor activities. Societal factors such as decreasing church attendance, the terrorist attack in 2001, concerns for health, scared of the boogeyman, ensuring the safety of our campers, a depressed economy, these all took a devastating toll on many camps. The Brethren Retreat leadership was fervent in acquiring adjacent property during this decade. A Cozy Cottage ministry was launched with the Candy Cottage, soon followed by Lakeview Cottage. As adjacent properties and houses were acquired, a new ministry opportunity then evolved that benefited our efforts to reclaim the original 1925 warranty deed, affordable housing. Affordable housing was offered as long-term rental to utilize our homes that had been acquired. The income helped to pay the acquisition expenses, and we were providing a ministry to local families who were in transition and couldn't afford their own home or the high rent that was being charged. We have 7 long-term rentals. 3 of those homes, families have been there more than 12 years. One of the families testified last year at our annual meeting, thanking this ministry for the ability to be a 1 household income in a 2 household income society, because us offering affordable housing, his wife was able to stay home to homeschool his child, their child. The affordable housing is very, very beneficial to our desire to recapture what we originally had and to be able to minister with families on a long-term basis. Some of the aging structures that we acquired, then we also tore down. We've tore down 14 structures of what we've acquired and have created green space. The deer walk through the neighborhood. We have 3 flocks, groups. They're actually called rafters of turkeys. Need any dinners? We've got plenty of turkeys coming through. Been reports of many fox. Some have even said they've seen the bobcat. And one neighbor claimed they've seen a black bear cub back in the marsh. We have barred owls that are flourishing. You can hear them now, even in the winter. There is plenty of wildlife at the Brethren Retreat. The effort to modernize the aging buildings was set in motion with many upgrades to winterize the water, or to upgrade the water system, to upgrade the water heaters, to upgrade the water softeners, new furnaces, additional AC units, replacing the roofs, improving the room decor, theming the building colors, and to promote a natural rustic appeal. We hired our first year-round program director. Her name was Jeannie Ulasic. She was from Minnesota. Diane Stout from the College Corner Church served many years as our cook and as an office manager. Jay and Juanita Finster from Peru, retired RV, spent winters in Florida, spent 5 or 6 summers with us doing maintenance in the summer at the Brethren Retreat. Then we get to the 2010s, and we hit some big obstacles. The Brethren Retreat weathered a severe economic collapse, the Great Recession. We hadn't seen an economic turndown like that since the 1930s. Camper attendance, although increased, because parents decided to send their kids to camp instead of taking family vacations. And it wasn't just with us. Many camps figured that out the next 2 years after that because attendance decreased as the economy got better and they took family vacations that they couldn't take in 09 and 10. We also recorded the highest program income since 1994, early in the decade of the 2010s. We haven't matched that, but projections are this year in 2024, we will exceed the program income, the utilization that was obtained in 2010. I'm very excited about that at this point. The struggle came when municipal sewers were installed around Shipshewana Lake, and the proposed lake at the Brethren Retreat, the rates were going to be astronomical. After a lengthy period of seeking legislative action, our rate was reduced by 40%. The Brethren Retreat leadership helped create legislation down in Indianapolis that protects every camp in the state of Indiana that is going to be served by a sewer conservancy. That was phenomenal. But it changed our sewer rate from over $20,000 to less than $10,000. That was significant for us. Otherwise, we did not know how we were going to pay the bill and still do maintenance. The Layman's Lodge experienced a rebuild expansion of the bathrooms from a gift from the Tyosa Brother Church when it closed. The lobby was also upgraded in the Layman's Lodge with a kitchenette, rustic pine planking. The retreat house received upper floor renovations to the bathroom and expansion into another room. And then there is a gift from the Winding Waters Brethren Church that funded that. The Morning Watch Memorial was created with gifts that honored Alan Stout, who was from the Burlington First Brethren Church, longtime board member, very active with the Brethren Retreat. This site offers a flowering waterfall, fireplace, a gathering area, and it's hugged by nature. Many people enjoy that little welcoming spot. Near the end of this decade, the opportunity was presented to acquire the Michiana Baptist Camp. That would have been the camp that was on the east side of the lake. I remember as a camper, we would want a canoe over there so we could look at the girls. We evaluated our strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats of if we acquired or if we didn't acquire those 10 acres. The leadership then decided it was strategically prudent to acquire that property. The Brethren Retreat now had fulfilled a 40-year goal to have a second facility adjacent to Camp Shipshewana. In the 2020s, we got ready to celebrate our 100th anniversary. But from the very start, this decade was rocked with COVID pandemic. The Brethren Retreat was founded in 1919. That was a pandemic too, the Spanish flu. And when we were celebrating our 100th anniversary, we were rocked with it again. And there were global shutdowns in March and April. Many camps closed because there was no potential to host the summer camps that year. But we had an opportunity to conduct a junior-senior high camp for 49 people with 16 days notice. The State Department of Health gave us, on July 3rd, thumbs up. You started having overnight camps. And in 16 days, we were able to launch a camp for our junior and senior hires. The Brethren Retreat then received many generous gifts from our brethren churches during that time to help keep paying the expenses. We were granted 2 payroll protection program loans, grants from the United States government, and then the Brethren Church National Office gave us a $4,000 grant also. The attempt to celebrate our 100th anniversary over Labor Day, it was delayed till 21. We also celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Tabernacle in 2022, and in 2023 we celebrated the Retreat House being 100 years old. I get guest groups that will come in and say, I can't believe that this place is 100 years old. These buildings are so well cared for. It's a testament back to us as brethren and what we've done with the treasure that has been entrusted to us in our stewardship. We closed on the acquisition of the Michiana Baptist Camp in 2021. Plans are in process to develop this facility. We've had several tent camping events there. We're getting ready to have 2 camps there and renovate the bathhouse extensively. And we call that facility the East Campus. It's on the east side of the lake. The Retreat House received an extensive exterior renovation in 2022 with a gift from the Ardmore First Brethren Church, and central air conditioning was added on the upper floor as well. The Layman's Lodge was gutted, rewired, insulated, remodeled with rustic pine planking on the east wing, the west wing in 2019, and then in 2021 the west wing was done. Air conditioning was also added to the Layman's Lodge, which is quite an amenity for that building compared to years past. We received 3 crosses to create a majestic area with the Winding Water crosses after that church had closed in Elkhart. It provides a stage, an outdoor sanctuary for prayer, teaching, inspiration, worship, and more. It's such a beautiful entrance as you come into the camp and you see these 3 majestic crosses there with a stone front. If you go to our Facebook website, you'll see a recent picture I put up where the crosses are lighted at nighttime. It's beautiful. That picture was taken by one of our guests. As the Brethren Retreat enters its 2nd century of ministry, the focal point continues on the training of promising young leaders for service in our local church. Our programs expand over 10 decades, include Bible camps, adventure camps, specialty camps, various retreats for adults, youth, families. In the past 40 years, there's been a concerted effort to winterize and modernize the buildings to include like-minded Christian groups as part of our growing mission to refresh Christians in their daily walk with Jesus. Numerous property acquisitions over 35 years begin to create new opportunities for ministry programs. Some are restructured to address the changing entrance of our society and the addition of the specialty camps. Plans are in motion to prepare 2 more buildings to accommodate indoor activities and to plant a church and to provide additional lodging at the main campus. Footprints have been established for potential location of making 2 more buildings. We've tried to plant church at Camp Shipshewana 4 different times in the 50s and 60s. It always drifted away. And just recently I heard that there had been a conversation of possibly having a church planted at Shipshewana again. Not a bad idea. I've had at least a half a dozen neighbors over the years say, you know what, if you ever had church here, I'd come, but I wouldn't go anywhere else. To conclude, The leadership is formulating a strategic plan for 2025 and potentially updating the vision path established in 1997. The succession of the executive director leadership is being carefully planned. I'm getting ready to start my 30th summer. I tell people I'm closer to sunset than sunrise. The potential for community engagement in LaGrange County is worthy. What else can we do to engage our neighbors? The recruitment of additional church involvement is warranted. The necessity for leadership development is paramount. Our future is exciting. The dream of Arthur T. Wyrick in 1920 to create an overgrown piece of bottom land into a leaders' academy was expanded into a vibrant year-round Christian retreat center, hosting guests from all 50 states, 42 countries, and typically 3,000 to 4,000 guests a year. Our Cozy Cottage ministry is growing. One of our board members is from the Cozy Cottage Ministries. Our second largest donors never attended an event at the Brother Retreat. They've only stayed in a Cozy Cottage. These are the statistics I like the most. 1 out of 8 campers say yes to Jesus. This past year we had 16%. Overall, 2 out of 3 campers make a spiritual decision to reconnect, accept, or serve God full-time. 30% of our summer staff say yes to serving full-time in ministry. Throughout the past years of ministries, one characteristic has remained unchanged in our focus on Bible-centered programs to create leaders and a desire to share the love of Jesus with others. As it was stated in the Evangelists, in a handbook that was printed in 1930, as they reflected upon the first 10 years of the Brethren Retreat, it is hoped that Camp Shipshewana will become a training center for Brethren young people and adults. In fact, it's just what we desired it to be. Pastors and other church leaders will have problems lightened in their own churches if they send capable, talented young people to this camp and the Leaders Academy for instruction. The Brethren Retreat at Shipshewana Lake offers valuable programs in a distinctive location which produces effective ministry results. I think it's a trophy of the Brethren Church. And as Paul said to the Corinthians, we need to be faithful with what we've been entrusted and not take it for advantage, and make sure that it continues to fulfill what God has asked us to do over the past 100 years. Thank you, New Paris, for being an exceptional part of that vision path, with a pastor who helped be one of the founders and training me up to serve there for the last 30 years.